Hey guys, today I wanted to take a look at what a Biden landslide will look like. So this is obviously a hypothetical election map. This is not my personal prediction, but I do think that, this landslide scenario is definitely possible and within, the realm of possibility for Joe Biden to pull off in 2020. But I think that, a more conservative map for Biden is more likely, but I do think that, if things go his way, this could definitely occur on election night. Now, somebody did suggest that I go region by region instead of just filling in safe states, likely states, lean states. So I'm actually going to try doing that today. So first, I'm going to start in the Pacific Northeast with the states of Washington, Oregon, as well as Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. So basically, I will just be filling in Washington and Oregon as safe Democratic states, and then the states of Idaho and Wyoming as safe Republican states. Now, in the state of Minnesota, I will actually give it to Donald Trump as a likely state, just because there's been 2 to 3 polls out from this state for the 2020. There's not much polling conducted in Montana, but Donald Trump is not leading by a solid margin in the state of Montana. So I think that, in a Biden landslide victory, Donald Trump would not see a large margin of victory in the state of Montana for him, so I think a likely margin is more likely. As well as the state of Utah, I think Utah will go to Donald Trump with a likely margin, just because I think there's going to be a lot of protests, Mitt Romney voters. Mitt Romney, he's not running for election, but, in 2016, a lot of votes went to him in the state of Utah just because they did not like Trump or Clinton. And then looking at the Sunbelt here, I'm going to move on to the Sunbelt, including the state of Nevada. So California definitely safe for Joe Biden. Nevada, I think, will be a likely state. Yes, Hillary Clinton did only win the state by 2.8%, but Biden is polling pretty well in Nevada. I don't think it would be a safe state, but I think that a likely state is definitely possible for Biden in Nevada. And then, continuing to outperform Hillary Clinton, the state of Arizona, I think, will be a lean state for Joe Biden, just because Arizona is moving more and more to the left. And even if Joe Biden isn't going to win with the landslide, I still expect Arizona to go to Joe Biden, just because of how much more towards the left it has moved in. And looking at the states of New Mexico and Colorado, I think safe Democratic states is the best categorization for this in a Biden landslide. He's polling by around 13% in these 2 states, so I think that a solid margin, I think they could definitely go over 15 for Joe Biden in a landslide scenario. And this may be controversial, but looking at the state of Texas, I really do think if Biden was to win the landslide, he would have to win Texas. It wouldn't really be a landslide if he didn't win over 400 electoral votes. So Texas, I think, would be a tilt state for Joe Biden. I think he would have the narrowest of margins in this state. He is actually polling in the lead in Texas, which is very surprising considering no Republican has lost the state of Texas since 1980. But, Texas, I think, will go to Biden in a landslide scenario by a very small margin, 0.2, 0.3% for Joe Biden. And then next, I'm just going to fill in Alaska and Hawaii. Hawaii, obviously a safe Democratic state. Alaska, I think, will be likely for the president, just because it did not go his way in 2016. It only went to Donald Trump by, I believe, 11% in the state of Alaska. So I think that in a Biden landslide scenario, he would definitely not be able to move Alaska up into the safe column. I think, again, likely is more possible for Donald Trump. At the next, I'm going to be looking at the Midwest. This is basically Trump's key demographics. So I will be giving basically most of the Midwest as safe states for Donald Trump, with the exclusion of the 2nd District in Nebraska. I think Kansas, Oklahoma will also be safe Democratic states. However, that is basically where I draw the line. I think states past this point will not all be safe for Donald Trump. I'll be looking at the Appalachian area next. Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, I think will be definitely safe states for Donald Trump. State of Indiana, I don't really think so. I think the state of Indiana will actually be a lean state for Donald Trump, just because he's not polling too well here. He's polling by around 5%. Even when Mike Pence, his vice president, is from the state of Indiana, he's not even polling with a solid margin in this state. In a traditionally Republican state, I think only a lean margin is likely for Donald Trump. And then I'm just going to look at basically the Bible Belt now, basically the southeast of the United States. I think that Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi will all be, all of Alabama actually, will all be likely states for Donald Trump. He's not, he's polling alright in these 4 states by around, 12-13%. I think the likely margins are more likely in this state, in these 4 states, so I will be giving them to Donald Trump by likely states. I really don't see them moving down into the lean column, even if Biden wins by a landslide, so I'll be putting them in the likely Donald Trump column. And then looking at the state of Florida, I think a lean margin is likely for Joe Biden in Florida if he were to win by a landslide, just because Florida typically always very close. Biden actually polls in ahead in the state by over 5%, but I really think that even if he were to win by a landslide, I don't think it would move up into the likely column for Joe Biden, just because of how close Florida usually is. And then looking at the state of Georgia, I think a tilt margin, I think, like Texas, would actually flip for the first time in many decades for Joe Biden if he were to win by a landslide. But South Carolina, I don't think it's going to go to Joe Biden no matter how much of a margin he wins by. I think that a lean margin like Indiana is likely. I think South Carolina and Indiana are going to vote pretty similarly anyways, just because South Carolina leads by around 5-6% as well. South Carolina is moving a little bit more and more to the left, but 2020 I don't think it's going to flip, even if Biden wins by a landslide. And then looking at the state of North Carolina, I think North Carolina, a lean Democratic state, I think it's going to vote similarly to Arizona. I think that in a Biden landslide, it would move up from tilt to lean. I typically categorize this as a tilt Democratic state, but, just on this map, I will give it to Joe Biden as a lean state. And then next, I'm going to be basically looking at the Midwest area. I did already fill in Indiana, but Midwest, basically, I think that the state of Missouri will go to Donald Trump by a lean margin as well. I was actually considering giving the state of Missouri to Joe Biden just because Barack Obama came within 0.2 points of winning the state. However, since then, Missouri has become more and more red, so I'm actually not going to give it to Joe Biden, even if he wins by a landslide. But I will give most of the Rust Belt to Joe Biden. I think that Minnesota would become a likely state, Wisconsin would be a lean state, Michigan a likely state, Pennsylvania a likely state, Ohio a tilt state, Iowa a tilt state, and then of course Illinois a solid Democratic state. Basically, I think that Joe Biden would basically win all of the Rust Belt except for Indiana and, if you consider Missouri to be part of the Rust Belt. This is just mainly because I think that Donald Trump has not delivered on his promises of bringing back jobs into the Midwest, so I think that all of the people who were optimistic about him being able to bring jobs back to the Midwest, because of the coronavirus, he has basically failed because of all of the unemployment that has come as a result of his bad handling of the COVID-19 crisis, which is why I think that they are all going to flip back to blue. Minnesota, I think, it was obviously going to be blue anyways, just because of its voting history. Michigan, Pennsylvania polling very well for Biden. Very well in Wisconsin too, but I think that Donald Trump will be able to outperform the polls a little bit here too. So I'm going to be a little conservative with that and only give it to Joe Biden with a lean margin, even if he were to win with a landslide. Ohio and Iowa, he's actually pulling behind in these 2 states. He was actually ahead a couple of weeks ago. However, now it has moved into the Donald Trump tilt column, but I think that landslide, of course, he would have to be able to outperform the polls in these 2 states. I think definitely a tilt margin is likely for Joe Biden. And then next, looking at the 2nd district of Nebraska, I will be giving it to Joe Biden with a lean margin, likely margin, just because, there's really no polling out of here, but some pretty early polls do show Biden quite a bit ahead, so I'll just give it to him as likely. In a landslide scenario, I think likely is definitely reasonable for Joe Biden. And then next, I just want to take a look at basically the entire northeastern area. I think that the state of Virginia would be a safe Democratic state if this were to really occur. I think in a landslide victory, the Republicans have never won a statewide election in the state for over a decade now, so I think that solid for the Democrats at this point, Virginia is. I think Virginia is going to continue voting with the Democrats as it's, been doing in the past couple of years. And then Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Washington, D.C., New York, Vermont, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. There's really no point of talking about these states. They always vote Democratic, and they will vote Democratic in 2020 by safe margins. I can promise you that. Even if Biden doesn't win the election, safe margins no matter what in these states. In Massachusetts, Hillary Clinton, even she won the state by over 30%. And then looking at the state of New Hampshire, likely state, I think it's going to vote similarly to the states of Minnesota and Nevada, all states that went to Hillary Clinton by pretty small margins that I think Biden is going to heavily improve on. And then looking at the state of Maine, I think likely all across the board, except for the 2nd district, I think it will be lean for Joe Biden. I think he will actually be able to flip it in his landslide scenario. So basically this is my 2020 electoral map if Joe Biden was to win by a landslide. If you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like as well as subscribing to my channel. I will probably be releasing my Senate election night tomorrow, or worst case scenario the day after that. So make sure you're subscribed to know when that comes out, and I will see you in the next video.